Hello and welcome to Lowy Institute Conversations. I'm Michael Fullilove, the Lowy Institute's Executive Director. This is an unusual and rather special episode of Lowy Institute Conversations because I'm being joined by senior officials from the three Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. It's not often that we get to host national security leaders from these countries, let alone all at once. So let me welcome very warmly to 31 Bly Street, Deividas Matulionis, the Chief National Security Advisor to the President of Lithuania.
Hello.
Airis Rikveilis, the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Latvia, and Liina Areng from Estonia, who is Director of the CyberNet project. So warm welcome to all of you. A little bit of context before I put some questions to my guests. The Baltic states, of course, are three small countries on the eastern edge of Europe bordering Russia. Many Australians know them for their basketball, their beauty, the beauty of the countries, and indeed the Baltic diaspora. And I think I was saying to you guys that when I was growing up, I was honoured to have a wonderful Lithuanian Australian as my English history teacher. I played basketball against Latvian Australians. Unfortunately, I didn't know any Estonian Australians at that time. But the Baltic diaspora in Australia has been quite a big deal. Since Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine in 2022, I think the world has come to better recognise the geopolitical importance of these small but mighty countries. I think one of the unintended consequences of Putin's misadventure in Ukraine has been the tightening of connections between democracies from all over the world. So with that, let me kick off the question with a general question on exactly that topic, and let me invite each of you to come in if you'd like. Do you think I'm right? Do you detect that same quickening of connections between democracies around the world, even if they're on the opposite sides of the world? Is that part of the reason that you're in Australia? Maybe I can start with you, Deividas.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, to participate at this podcast. And what you are saying, I can agree with you 100%. And actually, when I was ambassador at NATO, I noticed growing interest to consolidate all democratic countries around the world, because we see, a tendency that authoritarian regimes are also trying to consolidate their power. And if we are not able to consolidate, then we all will be losing. And therefore, Europe, United States, and IP4 countries are the closest. Like-minded countries sharing the same values. And we should be together. We have no way out of this.
What do you think, Airis?
Yes, similar observation like Deividas. I would say what exacerbated this whole process is, of course, a technological advancement. In earlier years, last century, probably the distance was the natural impediment. Today we also need to travel to get to beautiful Australia, but we can communicate very fast. And that means that like dictatorships can exchange in a much faster pace, so should also we. And the important thing is that we would always be defending ourselves. So we would gonna naturally try to react on processes that happen. But current technological advancements allow us to be, if we so wish, and if we are proactive, then we can be ahead of at least certain events happening in the world. And for that, the mutual consultation and exchange of views and coordinating actions even is very important.
Liina.
Indeed. And also thinking of technological advancements and cybersecurity specifically, then geography doesn't matter that much. Australia and the Baltics are not that far apart because cyber attacks can travel instantly. And what happens, we are in the front line with one particular threat actor, which can cause harm to Australia just like that. And we need to exchange information. We need to collaborate. And as like-minded countries, we are in this together because this is the only way. We need to be more organized than organized crime.
Good line. I'm going to come back to you on cyber things, so hold that thought. Airis, let me put a quote to you that I was struck by last year from the President of Latvia, President Rikveilis. He said, "We know that Ukraine is fighting not only for us, but to some extent Ukraine is fighting instead of us." What did he mean by that?
What he means by that is that certainly a Russian attack on Ukraine, which actually in our case, we all believe that it actually didn't start in 2022. It started in 2014. And preparations for that were quite visible also before that. But Ukraine to Putin is, in our mind, only a station for pausing, so to say. Get Ukraine, then you become an empire again. Without Ukraine, you're not an empire. You're just one backward country with no prospect of bright future. With that, he wanted to take Ukraine. But then the question always is, what next? In my opinion, his opinion was not to stop at Ukraine. So he would look for further expansion. There are multitudes of different theories whether he would like to recreate the borders of Soviet Union or the earlier Russian Empire. That is insignificant. He would look for next steps. So this means that indeed what President Rikveilis was mentioning is that heroic Ukrainian fight is fight for all of us, because they are, first of all, democracy, they are a freedom-loving country, and they are the country who wanted to join transatlantic realm and European Union. And that is everything contrary to what Putin and his regime wanted. So from that perspective, Ukrainians are fighting every day for all of us, and not only all of us Balts and all of us Europeans, but all of us Australians and other people here in democracies all over the world.
Let me ask you a follow-up. Something that critics will sometimes say is that, of course, the Baltic countries were anxious to join NATO after the end of the Cold War, and we see now why. We see the protection that NATO membership affords the Baltic states. What do you say to those critics who say that NATO, by accepting the Baltic states into NATO, the West took NATO right up to the borders of Russia and, in a sense, provoked this kind of reaction from Putin?
I think it's a utterly wrong look on the global affairs. First of all, if you are a country and you are living in kind of democratic system or liberal democratic system of free world, then you are allowed to choose what blocks militarily, economically you choose. Another thing is that I always wonder, honestly, by this Russian argument of kind of betrayal of 1997, where they kind of, that NATO started expansion in Madrid summit, and so to say, there always this recollection that he was the Soviets, late Soviets, were promised not to have this NATO expansion. So we can't find these precise documentations where it was, but okay. But my point is, Russia was not stripped of its rights to be a democratic country too.
And
Russia could become a democratic country. Russia could become the most wealthiest country in the world and put its all wealth for good of its own people and rest of us. There's nothing wrong to make the good relations with Russia if Russia so would like to. But Russia never wanted. Instead of that, they started to coerce us very early in the mid-90s with these minority policies, language policies. And that simply broke any reason for us to believe that there will be some kind of new beginning with that new Russia. And that proved ourselves true, and I'm wrong.
Deividas, I want to ask you, sticking with the Ukraine war for the moment, how is this going to end? Where I don't know how many versions there have now been of peace plans floating around, drafted by who knows whom. Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner were recently in Moscow having discussions with Putin. We have in President Trump somebody who obviously is motivated to achieve a peace deal. He wants that for all sorts of reasons. It's not clear to me that that there is an agreement of interest between Ukraine and Russia to allow that. But what do you think will happen?
It's difficult to say what would happen, but at least I'm convinced that President Trump is really willing to have just and sustainable peace. He wants to remain in the history as peacemaker. And I don't believe in all these statements that President Trump is interested in establishing economic relations with Russia, because Russia is a specific country, and Americans, they know what does it cost, to invest into Russia, and they were several times already kicked off, and therefore, in my view, Russians are trying to play the game. They are trying to decouple. They are trying to present that now we are considered to be equal partner with America, and we need to speak together and to form and to shape the global rules of the game. But this, issue of Ukraine is completely not related to that. But I think Trump and American administration will not fall into this trap. And sometimes we exaggerate what Witkoff is doing, what Kushner is doing, and only Americans are doing something in this respect. We have to admit that Europeans are not doing anything. But at the same time, it's very important to know that when this project, the blueprint of 28 points came into the light, it became evident that Americans, they tried also to speak with Europeans, and they listened to European voice, and also they discussed and also agreed with Ukrainians on some points. Not everything is agreed. I think we should trust a little bit more than sometimes in the international press is presented. Not to put it white and black approach. And I hope that this will not be at the expense of territorial integrity of Ukraine, and not at the expense of ability to choose security arrangements for Ukraine, and will not be considered and will not be treated as a sort of not a peace deal but capitulation deal. And Europeans are involved and Ukrainians are involved. Let's see, let's wait. It's not the first attempt. After Trump came to power, they tried many times, but I don't believe that Russia will go along and will try to have a peace deal which could be just and sustainable.
All right, Liina, I said I wanted to come to you on the question of Estonia, because it is Estonia is a remarkable place. Tallinn is an incredibly beautiful city. It's a sort of a Game of Thrones vibe with this castle on top of the hill, and then the beautiful old town below it. And yet, despite the ancient nature of the city, Estonia has always been at the very bleeding edge of technology, of digitalization of your society. You've been the victim, of course, of many cyber attacks, but you've been very agile in the way that you respond to that. So perhaps just to begin with for an Australian audience, tell us a little bit about why does Estonia call itself Estonia? Why is it such an important part of your identity?
Estonia, unfortunately, is not abundant with natural resources nor personal resources. There are very, very few people, and therefore we have to be smart on how we operate our government and how we organize our society. We have to be efficient, and digitalization is one way to increase the efficiency. And of course, it goes down to the trust of our society in the decisions that were made 20 years ago by our government at that time, when we even had even way more less resources than right now, to adopt this sort of trial and error method to digitalize our government and our society, because we just simply couldn't afford to maintain the physical offices of government in small villages, and our government at that time was quite brave, I believe, in order to adopt these technological advancements and use the brain power of the technical people who were advising the government, and so we were kind of developing the systems basically on top of the knee, we say that in Estonia, because we could not afford to purchase any off the shelf the products, and this I think this made the backbone of our digital government, and our population are now very used to having a lean government, a bureaucracy that is invisible, and to have a really transparent way of governance, and which in turn creates or enforces the trust in government, and also trust in the technology that the government is using. And of course, we have invested so much into this e-governance that in Estonia, as you mentioned, government or digital government is government. So we don't have anything else. So all our services are digital. Was this year where the last 3 services were digitalized. This was buying property, getting married, getting divorced. So the population is trusting government with really personal information, and they also demand from government to maintain this this data to maintain or assure the security of the data. And of course, I mean, it's not only about technology, but also, I mean, we are not cyborgs, so there's also a human component. So it also goes down to good governance and political vision. So this combination, I think, works well for Estonia, and maybe also exemplary to other countries globally that perhaps are larger, but also don't have resources and can follow the similar.
Well, let me ask you about that, because as you kind of alluded to, one of the downsides of digitalizing your society is you create a vulnerability, because if all the information and data and services are provided digitally, and you have a malign actor who can get in there, they can do all sorts of things. You mentioned earlier that there's one threat actor in particular that you're concerned about. So tell me, give us the latest on how Estonia is dealing with the incoming cyber attacks that you're facing at the moment.
Well, we have evolved quite significantly from the infamous cyber attacks in 2007, which when Russia was targeting in a very systemic fashion with distributed denial of service attacks, our government and our private sector. But today we're dealing with much more with far more significant cyber threats, and we are basically building our approach on maintaining trust, because how computer systems fail, they fail in 2 ways. They either break, or people lose trust in using them. And since we have made significant investments into developing this digital government, we want to maintain this trust. So we have to be on top of the potential malevolent actors who want to cause harm. And predominantly the threat actor has been Russia for us, but now we're also increasingly seeing the involvement of China and other actors. So I think our main approach is building resilience, a whole of society resilience, and there we want to make sure that we find the bright people across the society, public sector, private sector, academia, and involve them in defending our country against cyber attacks, because obviously we can't afford to have a mighty cyber army on our government's payroll. So we are happy if somebody else is paying, but they are patriotically motivated and they want to do something for the country. So in Estonia we have this 3-layered risk cyber crisis response system. That the first layer is our national incident response team, our national CERT. The second layer are the cybersecurity people across the government agencies, and the third layer is a voluntary force. So volunteers that form a cyber defense unit of our National Defense League. So it's sort of a paramilitary. And we involve them when the 2 layers are insufficient to mitigate the cyber attacks. And we do place the responsibility of every end user, because every device is vulnerable, whether it's in your pocket or somewhere else. But it provides an access point to an attacker that is probably after to much bigger targets.
Thank you for that. And Deividas and Airis, when your countries think about the number one threats, the hybrid sort of threats that you're facing, what is top of mind for you? Let me start with you.
We have 2, as I probably mentioned, maybe not. Lithuanian geographical situation is a bit different than Estonian, and similar to Latvia, because we have 2 neighbors. We have Russia in the west, Kaliningrad region, and Belarus in the east. And both are malign actors, and Belarus is a proxy of Russia, the closest proxy of Russia. And therefore we experience hybrid actions, subversive action, destructive action from Russia. First of all, we had many cases of arson, and we had also this, infamous case on incendiary packages sent from Lithuanian terminal to some terminals, and with the goal, to explode them in the aircraft.
These are on cargo planes that were heading to London elsewhere.
London, Dresden, and some other parts of the world. And this is, and also there were several prevented attempts of assassination against Russian opposition leaders in Lithuania. At the same time, we have a new phenomenon from Belarus. This is a rather peculiar case. They're sending meteor balloons towards Vilnius airport, which creates a lot of disturbances of civil aviation. For all of your information, already 17 times during this 2 months we were forced to close Vilnius airport, with all the consequences, with all the losses and problems to the people. And we have to deal with it. And this is a bit different story than Russian, hybrid attack. But it's even sometimes even more dangerous for, Lithuanian people. If something would happen, if we, were not able to close the airport, then of course hitting with this cargo tank on the air balloon could have a devastating effect, and people are killed. That would be considered terrorist act, not anymore hybrid hostile act.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the Chinese spy balloon a few years ago. Who would have known that balloons would have a resurgence in international relations? But Airis, what about you? You're the national security advisor to your prime minister in Latvia, sitting at their right arm. What keeps you up at night?
If we talk about these hybrid attacks by hybrid tactics employed, Russia employs the full spectrum that they can. On hybrid, on cyber, I apologize. I would say that is so daily that it slowly, so to say, becomes from the top threat into the kind of daily business. Definitely, for me as a national security advisor, it is still a one of the most important threats. But if you experience a cyber attack of 1 year and couple of days long, DDoS, right, persistent, the same repeats every day, the same actor. We need to ensure so that people are protected, and so that they don't see that effect. And so far, we proved our systems resilient enough to resist against that. There are attempts to obviously organize espionage, cyber espionage, sabotage. Russians are engaging in disinformation, and they're employing everything that they have at their hands. Recently, they also kind of tried to test something with the Green Man in Estonian and Latvian border proximity. But what makes me up at night persistently these days is something similar to what Deividas was mentioning. This is instrumentalized migration. So basically, Russia and Belarus, in coordination, are organizing influx of people from different parts of the world under different pretexts, sometimes as tourists, and then they bring them to the Latvian, Belarusian, Lithuanian, Belarusian, and Polish Belarusian border, and dump them there, and under false promise that they are now within the reach of the European Union border, which is correct. They are within reach, but there is no way in that way into European Union. So up until this day, we prevented more than 12,000 of such attempts this year only. And you can imagine, for the size of Latvia and our resources from border guard, national guard, and military, that drains our resources very heavily. So we are really fighting that as a battle, because obviously many of them don't want to reach Latvia or Lithuania or Poland. They want to go further into West Europe, where they are kind of promised to have lush life and doing nothing probably. So in that sense, we feel that we also guard our European and NATO allies. And that is making a lot of pride in that job what we do, because we also, of course, have assistance from our brothers from Estonia, Finland, and Lithuania, and Poland. And that is something that we do persistently. I would go on drones, for example. That's a whole different story. But yeah, also technological advancements in drone technology is certainly wake up us at night.
Let me ask you about one topic that a couple of you have alluded to, but let me invite whomever would like to have a go at this, about the tightening of connection. I talked about the quickening of connections between democracies, but of course there's also a tightening of connections between authoritarian states. You mentioned China as a cyber threat actor, but we're seeing in the Ukraine war that the Russian invasion is being enabled by Chinese technology and by Iranian drones, and indeed by North Korean forces. And we saw a dreadful story just in the last couple of days about abducted Ukrainian children ending up in North Korean labor camps. So let me invite one of you to talk about this, the flip side of the democracy, the reawakening of democracy, and that is the tightening of connections between the authoritarians.
Well, if I may, definitely this is the most deplorable development we can see. And this, axis of evil, as we call it, you missed one country in this. Still Belarus is also probably the fourth country, which is the major enabler. We just remember that the Belarusian territory was used for invasion in the north of Ukraine and in the Kiev region. But in my view, the most dangerous is this, not very open but covert Chinese enablement of Russian war efforts. A Russian war machine would not be able to survive without dual-use goods from China, and of course, circumventing of sanctions through China and some other authoritarian states is also a big problem. And of course, North Korea is a special case. I will not speak about that. It's understandable. It's a very difficult part of the world. Iranians, in my view, after successful operation of Israel Iran will not be a very, serious in this, how to say, group of countries, and will not a big, influence. But China is the problem number one.
Just from my side, a little adding to what Deividas was saying is that I think these dictatorial states are learning from each other. It is not yet clear, I think, to what extent, whether they are doing it actively or by simply observing each other. But certainly, we can be absolutely sure that China is watching very carefully what Russians are testing in Europe and elsewhere, and they are analyzing very carefully what works and what not. And similarly, also, we think that the Russians are certainly also looking what is being done in the Southeast Asia and Pacific by China, and look how they would like to make the same strategies and tactics work, let's say, in the Baltic Sea. Right? We saw suddenly some drones appearing over the European airports, and there are suspicions that they were not delivered by land, but by sea, by certain Russian vessels and commercial vessels probably. But all of that is, so to say, also very carefully analyzed by our own services. So it's a lot of work ongoing and measures and countermeasures applied.
Liina, I want to ask you the last question. I actually want to ask about another Estonian that I had something to do with, and that is Kaja Kallas, who was the Estonian Prime Minister and is now the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. I met Ms. Kallas at the Shangri-La Dialogue in 2023. It was a kind of a funny story because her national security advisor was trying to line up a 5-minute meet and greet with me and the Prime Minister because I wanted to interview her for my podcast. And so the advisor was saying, come with us and, keep coming. And I was sort of following around in her entourage, and it just sort of kept going. And suddenly I was in meetings with them. And finally we had this 5-minute meeting with Kallas and myself, and I was introduced as the head of the Lowy Institute. She said, "Oh, is that who you are? I thought because you were following me around, you were a bodyguard," which I took as a compliment. But anyway, so we had a chat. I then interviewed her for my podcast. But I want to ask you, it did strike me, it must be an amazing thing for Estonians, actually, for a country of, I think, 1.4 million people, to have one of your nationals helping to shape the foreign policy of a 450 million person bloc. What do Estonians think about this? How has that changed maybe the way that they feel about Europe as well?
Indeed, this is amazing for us to have basically one of us at holding such a top position in the European Union, and by that, of course, she needs to be neutral, but we are also hoping that our voice, our joint Baltic voice, is heard better through her as well, and then we see that those issues that are dear to us and that are close to our skin are also going through her, having a much larger and more impactful voice. Whether it has influenced somehow the Estonian approach to the EU or views towards EU, I don't think so, because Estonians have always been very supportive and are happy to be part of EU as well as NATO, because we see that this is indeed a added value for a country, because we are very small, and when we're part of a larger like-minded union, then this is I mean, in group we are stronger,
but it's a point of pride, basically.
Well, it definitely is a point of pride, and Estonia is so small that I also personally, I have a also personal story with Kaja. I used to dance in the same folk dance group, with her many years ago. So I'm happy to see her advancing in her career so well, and we all, I guess, wish her well.
Well, Liina, Airis, Deividas, thank you very much for the conversation. I wish you the best for the rest of your time in Australia, and I wish you nothing but the best for your country. So thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners and our viewers for joining us for this episode of Lowy Institute Conversations. Thank you to Josh Godding, Andrew Griffiths, and Max Broad for producing this episode. You can find past episodes at lowyinstitute.org, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.